Thanks very much for attending this panel about industry trends. We've got a very illustrious panel, but before we get to the illustrious people, I'll introduce myself. I'm Craig Chapple. I'm the senior editor of mobile games business website PocketGamer.biz. We also do a bunch of events called PocketGamer Connects. Sorry, my boss requires me to say these things. But they're very good. You should be London, January 21st, 22nd. And we also do another website called Influencer Update that I'm responsible for. But we have some great panelists here. If you'd all like to introduce yourselves and the companies you work for.
Hi, I am Jeff Gurian. I'm VP of Marketing and Ad Monetization at Kongregate, so both UA and ads, amongst other things, so most networks hate me.
Hi there, I'm Sally Liu. I'm the Senior Director of the Ad Monetization at Jac City. The games like Cookie Jam, Peanut Pop, those are Harry Potter as well.
Hello, my name is Brian Truman. I'm with GSN Games, Executive Director of Ad Monetization, Ad Operations, and Direct Sales.
Hello, my name is Alexandre Tan, and I'm VP Advertising and Brand Partnerships at Gameloft.
All right, thanks very much. So first, we're going to split this into a few categories. We're going to start talking about UA and growth trends. So this is kind of a question for perhaps Jeff and Brian. What are the most popular forms of advertisement for attracting users to new games at the moment, like whether in your game or in someone else's game? And are playables as popular as we're led to believe?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all kind of know the standard mix, rewarded videos, static, interstitials, banners. There are some emerging trends coming, VR ads for one that Sally and I saw the other day. Playables, I think, are extremely important part of the mix, but they are kind of maturing at a very fast rate just because the number of networks supporting them has grown rapidly and the number of companies doing them has grown rapidly. So I think it's kind of reaching a plateau in terms of performance, and until the next big thing comes along, we're all going to kind of have to use the standard formats we're all used to.
Yeah, I'll add just a little bit. I agree with everything Jeff said there. We're actually probably less interested in playables than a lot of other games, and obviously with every game, it's a different category, so we're in a very different category. Most of GSN is baby boomer, 55 plus females, and so we're looking to very different channels oftentimes. That includes even native ads or working through affiliates and trying to reach that older audience outside of other games. So working in social casino, it's like swimming with sharks. So you have to look everywhere.
Are there types that don't work anymore? Types of ad that don't work? Or that? Yes, type of ad formats that don't work. So playables is the new trend, but are there older formats that now people just aren't using? Shouldn't be?
Banners is that probably the obvious answer there. We don't buy banners really. Like mobile web banners is something we tend to stay away from. I will actually add on playables. The one thing that's really exciting, I think, from a monetization perspective, and also maybe for some of our other games, is the new sort of demo to try, right, where it's more authentic to the actual gameplay, rather than hooking somebody in with something that's maybe a quick HTML5 game, but not necessarily what the actual gameplay is like, and what Google's doing with the Play Store and also App on Board. That's really, I think, the innovative playable space to be in.
So a question for Sally about Jac City. You've kind of gone from being a big casual games publisher and now into mid-core with Harry Potter being a huge success, and you acquired Brains for World War Doe. Are there differences you've noticed in how you go about your user acquisition campaigns? Are you looking at different things, or is it kind of similar?
Yeah, I would say definitely the LTV model is still the same, but the curve that we're looking at is definitely different, right? So for casual game, the payback is definitely faster. So like for micro games like World War Doe, we're definitely looking for a shorter curve that we can have a payback. So it's definitely different between the casual and versus the mid-core.
And Jeff, Kongregate's kind of is growing pretty rapidly in the mobile space. How have you found kind of the best way to grow quickly when you're looking at user acquisition? Is it kind of about upfront costs? Big user acquisition upfront, or are you kind of looking to promote through cheaper organic channels? I'm sure everyone's trying to look for cheaper channels.
Yeah, cheap channels are great. I mean, we had a kind of working mantra for the past couple of years that a title needed to be marketable or it needed to be featurable. We had a lot of success with featurable titles that couldn't be marketable, just from the power of working with the app stores, getting Game of the Day, Best New Update. I don't know, maybe show of hands, has anybody found featuring to be marketably worse in the past couple of years? So. A lot of people raising their hands. So as featuring has gone down in just volume generally, UA has gone up in importance, and we're now kind of focused on UA as a major growth strategy. There are other ways to acquire users, but as a sustained, scalable channel, like UA is by far and away the single biggest.
And so Alexander, with Gameloft, you've driven just countless users. I think earlier in the year in your financials, maybe it was boasting really about how the amount of downloads you've got. I think the biggest publisher. Again, what is your user acquisition strategy there? Is it about you have to pay up front for that, or because you've got such a big portfolio, is it about building that portfolio and cross promoting?
Well, the thing is, UA is only one part of the equation. Everybody talks about UA, but when you look at it, actually, I would kind of slightly disagree with what you said about UA being, the most sustainable probably in the long term. I think as game developers, we have to build on all the other dimensions. I mean, so, UA is the paid version, paid dimension, but you've got also the earned, the shared, the owned. All of these different medias, are super powerful. You would just need to learn how to leverage them. And I don't think we've done, I would say collectively, a good enough job in the last years in harvesting, the impact of those channels. So of course, I would not put everybody in the same basket, but I think there are other more sustainable or as sustainable levers to UA. So UA doesn't work for all the games. And when you look at UA, you also have to look at App Store optimizations. How do you optimize the assets that you put up there? How do you iterate on them? And again, same thing for the social channels as well. What do you do there? How do you harvest relationships with the media, with the bloggers, with the influencers? And these are all other dimensions that need to be taken into consideration, not just basic UA. So that's I think we at least that's what we do. We take a look at all those dimensions and we try to really leverage all of those in combination.
I don't want to put our consumer site out, the people that are out of a job, but does the media really matter for mobile?
Media.
Yeah, so
yeah, I think, well, again, there's no one size fits all, but we've done some media campaigns in some of our releases. You need to still be agile. Media campaigns can cost a lot of money. So you have to choose, to bet on the right horse. Sometimes you've got to take a bet as well, actually win a longer term and say, well, you strongly believe in one product. But I think, as mobile gaming has become more democratized and is reaching a far bigger portion of the population these days than it used maybe 10 years ago, I think we have to take a look at that. And again, digital media, can help us be more agile than just traditional media.
So we've got these, Voodoo being the key example of hyper-casual growth, and there's also Ketchup. And what they've done really well is, other than being fantastic at the user acquisition, they have built these massive portfolios that they can also cross-promote to. Is there a strategy here about building up these portfolios so you can do that and then grow from there? A question for you as well, Sally.
I think there's definitely a lot of conversation about do we want to build a studio just due to hyper-casual games, right? It's just such a hot market right now. It's a very different business model for sure. So we are potentially looking into that, but definitely would like to kind of see more like how Voodoo is doing, how Capture's doing, how everybody's globally doing those things, and then kind of learn from that before we actually tap into that. Because like cross promotion power is great for in the hyper casual markets, and then that's something that, as we all know, cross promotion's LTV is definitely much higher, right? So that's something we would love to test. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Alexander, did you want to add anything else? No.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think, talking about UA and hyper casual, I think first and foremost, a game has to be self-sustainable. So having a strategy where you create a roster of hyper casual games to kind of have a medium in which you're going to promote other games, I think is a bit dangerous. Hyper casual scene is a very competitive one, as we all know. Going into this scene right now, I think is a very bold move for anyone. So I think again, it's for me, it's self-sustainability of each game that you guys release. That's key. Another thing which we haven't talked about, but is kind of hanging there, is there any risk that any of the OTT platform owners will suddenly put a stop to hyper-casual games? I mean, that's one thing that we should debate on. Will Apple and Google carry on and let those games flow through the gates? They're not taking any revenue or almost no revenue because they're mostly ad-funded, right? So yeah, these are also other challenges, I think, for that segment.
I guess that could change at any time. Where Apple has done this kind of thing in the past. Maybe not to that extent, but certainly platform holders can do that. Kind of go to you, Brian. With social casino, you're coming at it from a different angle, as you were saying. So, what strategies do you employ that perhaps other games developers could learn from in their user acquisition?
Well, I would agree with what Alexander was saying. We develop games that we expect to be self-sustaining and have a very long product life cycle, right? So we're looking at a game that's going to be in the market for 5+ years, right? We're not looking to move someone from one game to game every few months. That would a hyper-casual type of game. So those are the investments that we make, right? And so when we're buying users or acquiring users or looking at different campaign or channels, we're looking for channels that specifically are going to provide users who are going to be retained for a very long period of time, and also particularly for our category in social casino, provide high value, high ARPDAUs and LTVs that are going to be sustainable to your point, right? So it's people who play every day. It's people who go in and actually deposit revenue. That's a very different strategy than a hyper casual game that's ad supported, right? So the channels are going to be different, right? We're looking at older audiences typically, and so it's a matter of knowing your user, having a core demographic, and being able to find them at those key touch points.
So a question for all of you: what strategies are there for driving more organic downloads that perhaps we haven't already discussed, and engagement as well? I think in the past I've heard people talking about using Discord in various kind of ways to at least keep users engaged. I don't know.
I can say that GSN is not successful at that. So anybody else can add?
I mean, nor have we been. To kind of touch on what Alexandra said, I mean, there are a ton of channels that you can use outside of paid UA. It's a question of incrementality, and it's a question of resources to make those work. So, if you have a small team and you need to scale fast, UA is an easy way to do that. If you have a larger team, you can go out and forge those relationships with third-party sites, do more media-focused stuff. So it's really a question of your scalability and resources at hand, and allocating those to meet the goals of the studio.
Any other strategies that you want to do before we move on to the next topic?
I think we're very similar to what just Alexandra was mentioning, like ASO optimization, the featuring actually helping us, and also like social viral is definitely a very key to success as well. Yeah.
So the next topic that we're going to talk about is a bit more about publishing and also mergers and acquisition activity. There's a few here that are pretty hot in that space. A question for Brian and Sally is how data-driven are your games? Like, how do you identify the hits?
We are extreme data-driven because everything is about numbers, right? And then you not only just game metrics, your revenue monetization metrics is all about data. We spend a lot of time doing data mining, just understand how a user performs and then like behave in the games, and then trying to give them the best like content or the activities or events based on those data. So we're a highly data-driven company.
I can affirm GSN operates very similar, right? So what can I add to that? But as far as identifying hits, we do a lot of testing, right? Probably longer, right? Like I heard, this hyper casual stuff where you can get something out in a week and see if it's, or if it's not a hit, you trash it, move on to another thing. That's not the way that we operate. When we launch a game, we're launching a game with, a 1-year plan, right? And so it's a big investment, and we decide to publish a game. We're only going to publish 1 to 2 games a year. And so we make those decisions with, as you said, a lot of data. In terms of mergers and acquisitions, we are a company that's known for having bought a number of idle studios, and Bingo Bash is a massive acquisition for us. And so when we do look at those, we're looking at the team a lot of times, right? So we look to retain that team. We look for talent. The fact that they've built a game, and a sustainable game that's been around for a long time and will continue to be around for a long time. And you can usually, as you said, like look into the game metrics, the mechanics that are actually optimized for revenue for us. That's key, right?
Cool, thank you. Alexander, Gameloft has undergone some changes a little bit, I guess, in its release schedule. Please, if I'm wrong, you can dispute it. So less games each year now. I guess what was the decision behind doing that, and is data kind of now playing a bigger role in the games that you do release? And if you can say, what are the benchmarks?
Yeah, I mean, so Gameloft was notoriously known for launching many games, and even many years ago at the launch of the App Store, in the premium days we used to launch probably more games than anybody else. We used to launch up to 30 games a year on the App Store. So this clearly has changed now, and as we are now in a game as a service environment, of course the mechanics are very different. The paradigm has changed. There's a lot more I would say effort that is put into extending the life of each product that we release. So yes, so we what we do now is we also soft launch, which is something we did not do before. A few years ago, we did not soft launch games. We do now. We have reduced our production life cycles as well. So for a game to hit the market, it's going to be more in the range of 9 months than 16 or 24 months, which it used to be in the past. Of course, we look at retention day 1, day 7, day 30, and we also iterate on all the marketing assets. We do a lot of A/B testing on this, and literally, I mean, the good time for us to go from soft launch to worldwide launch is when the improvement we make to the game become marginal, really. But I guess that's no different from my colleagues here. The thing, though, is that we kill a lot more products at an early stage than we used to, as well, and that enables us to really put much more focus on whatever we decide to take to soft launch and also to worldwide launch. If we were to bring to market everything that we have in store, I mean, we just waste way too much energy and time. So that's why. So that's what's driving us now. It's not about how many products. It's more about trying to refine, refine each product and hopefully, make it big.
One for Jeff. So small developers may not have these big UA budgets. So depending on the level of success they want to achieve, which is different for different people, is the only option really to obtain investment for UA or to find a publisher?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a lot of small developers in here, so might not have that problem. But we work with a lot of small developers, and there are some strategies they can do in-house, which is just take their profit and reinvest that into marketing, whether it be UA or something else, a social program or influencer program. If they want scalable marketing, they generally will have to go to a third party, like a publisher. or there's agencies out there that support UA now. But it's very difficult to grow on their own and get funding just for UA because investors, unless they see a very good history of metrics, are kind of hesitant to invest long-term into a UA budget. But that's mostly for smaller third-party companies.
And Sally, we were talking I mentioned a bit earlier about Jam City's mergers and acquisitions that are going on, and we mentioned Brains, the Colombian studio, has been acquired. What's the thinking behind this strategy? Why not just keep it all internal? Why acquire others?
I totally agree with Brian's points. Is acquire talents, right? So these people are super smart, and then we're trying to diversify our portfolio as well. So it's not just like it's a great game. So Overdose is it's award-winning game that they won a couple of awards in 2017, and we feel that it's a very good mix to our portfolio. And then trying to diversify our all the games that we offer to the players as well. Yeah, it's definitely a good addition to our portfolio.
A question for everyone. Are we kind of seeing a consolidation of publishers in the mobile games industry? We're going to see that soon with so many popping up. And we're even seeing companies like AppLovin get into the publishing space. Or I think, I can't remember if you mentioned it earlier, someone from IronSource, that some developers are now expanding into publishing. So yeah, are we going to see a big consolidation there?
I think it's a little bit early on the consolidation call. At least for now, different publishers have kind of had their own sandbox. AppLovin and Lion Studios kind of went in the hyper-casual route. Kongregate traditionally has been a full-service, end-to-end agency of sorts publisher. There are various developers getting into that. I think as more companies do get into it, the competition will get more fierce. So probably shakeout from some of the publishing programs is probably apt to happen more fast than consolidation, but there very well could be some consolidation in the space too. But it is difficult, especially working with third-party developers who you don't control. So there are challenges.
All right, we'll move on to the next topic, which is working with brands. Just going back to you, Alexandre. Gameloft has a Gameloft advertising solutions. Has worked with a lot of brands. Could you actually explain a bit how that works and how this supports your business and growth?
How long have we got?
I think we've got another 15 minutes for this panel. So.
Okay. Right. So I guess the path we took is pretty different probably from most people in this room, whereby we decided to internalize a lot of the brand advertising business that we do. So we do work with transition partners, including IronSource for our mediation. But we've also taken the decision, and that was back 4 years ago, to internalize a lot of the stuff. So that goes with our ad tech, creating our own ad server, creating our own programmatic SSP 3 years ago, basically opening an internal creative agency, which is staffed by over 100 people now, that R&D interactive formats just for brands, okay? So, and of course, we hired our own ad sales force, which is a team of 60, and ad ops team of 30. Because 4 years ago, we really thought, okay, running gaming ads into games is great, but the reality is that the big revenues, the ads revenue out there, is actually with brands, okay? Brands that advertise on TV, in print, on the web. This is the holy grail, okay? So how can we capture, as an industry, part of that pot of money? And that's what we decided to do, and to structure ourselves to actually try and get some of that money. So I won't kid you, it's a tough job. Anyone who's been working with media agencies will know what I'm talking about. You talk to media agency about mobile, and they'll look at you and say, yeah, I know mobile. Yeah, that's cool. It's growing super rapidly. And then you talk about mobile apps, and they start looking at you and say, well, okay, I know the web as an agency, but mobile app, bit of a different, species of fish. And then you say, oh, by the way, I'm actually mobile in-app game, and that's it. You've lost them. You've lost them because games, in some circles, is still a swear word. I mean, let's face it. For those guys, games are played by spotty teenagers closed in their rooms, not by consumers, not by people who buy clothes, eat, travel, enjoy themselves. So you've got to change that mindset.
Is that their fault, or is that the industry's fault for not promoting the values or the benefits of games?
I think it's, and this is off the record, in front of 200 people. No, I think it's also partly laziness on the media agency industry, to be honest, not doing their job and saying that if a media planner is going to take Facebook and Google on the media plan for his client, he's never going to get into trouble. But if he starts venturing into unknown territories, which is mobile gaming world, you can put the best KPIs in front of those guys. They'll say, well, there's still a risk, right? Facebook and Google, that's reassuring. So again, it's a long battle. It's a marathon, but it's one that is really, really worth, running, because ultimately the stakes are very big. And you were talking about the industry's fault. I think one thing we should blame ourselves on if we, if you really want to go into the brand advertising space, you need to be sure to be proving to the market that you're more transparent than anybody else out there. Okay? Transparency is a very, very key component for media agencies and brands, because this is one component that will avoid them, getting a tap on the head, from their client if something goes wrong. So you've got to be super transparent, and I'm talking about viewability measurement. I'm talking about removing fraud, if you have any, from your traffic. Sorry, being able to share as many KPIs, engagement, impressions is not really the debate, but it's really engagement. How much engagement can you create for those brands in your games? That's what ultimately we're going to be judged on. Okay?
All right.
Sorry.
Thank you. Jeff, Sally, is this a brand something that you're looking at working with, or perhaps you already are? But if so, why? If not, why?
Well, we're looking at them, but we're in a different boat than Alexandre, who just, I think, labeled off about 100 people on his ad team. I have 1.5. And so for us, we're not going to go do those relationships. We don't have the bandwidth to talk to agencies. So I think it's working. What we tend to do is view the brand dollars as backfill, considering that the brand CPMs have not caught up nearly to where performance CPMs are. We'll take the performance CPMs all day long, and then we'll slot in brands towards the end of the waterfall. Because of eCPM decay, that 10th impression is no longer worth 10 cents. We can now force it to be worth $5. So for us, it's a huge opportunity to get, but we're going to do it through agencies and networks, more so than we are doing direct deals with agencies or with brands themselves.
Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'm sure that small, medium publishers, among audience here would love to get brand demand. It's really hard, right? It's taking a lot of education. It's not just like the buyers understand what the inventory gaming industry are, and also like they need to understand their buying audience, not just the gamers, right? So they're approaching the same audience. I totally agree with you. The brand safety, viewability, also KPIs are very key to getting the brand demand. But it's also like, for team, which is we don't have budget or to hire like 100 people or whatever, or build our own ad server. It's we're relying on a lot of platforms, partners like ironSource, for example, that to get into that brand demand. So I think it's an industry movement. So we have to work together and then let people understand gaming industry. I mean, gaming inventory is actually good quality inventory.
I'll just add a little to that, because we do a lot of brand advertising at GSN. We have one distinct advantage that I like to point out, which is we also have a cable network in the U.S. And as a cable network in the U.S., we have a sales team that's out selling 30-second spots to media agencies, and that creates some opportunities for us that probably don't exist for a lot of medium-sized publishers, right? So it's one thing that we get to leverage, that trust, that sense of brand, the GSN brand, that's people that people are familiar with. They're like, oh yeah, my grandmother has that on all the time. You know? That's something that's familiar. We even bolstered that by adding, because we're owned by Sony Games, we had a Jeopardy World Tour, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, those Sony games as well. Those are brands that agencies know in the same way that they know Google, right? So they're like, oh, that's trust, right? I can put that in front of a client and they're not going to give me a hard time about it. And they know where the ad's showing up, and there's no question. And I would actually argue your point about CPMs is we're selling stuff in such a way now that we're seeing CPMs. You think performance CPMs are good for that first impression, but we're seeing CPMs all the way up to $150 CPMs for brand stuff. So there's money there. I want to keep following this guy and Rovio and all those guys. I think the brand money is going to come. You just have to be positioned to take it when it does.
We did just speak a bit about the opinions of these of brands, really, about the games industry, and it's still treated as the dirty word. Is that stemming from they're still nervous about the games industry, but kind of why? Is it because is there a reputation for, say, violence in games that puts brands off? Is that a thing that brands would be put off by? In general, I don't know if anyone else wants to.
Yeah. So. Hello.
He get his own microphone now.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's the diversity of the gaming, offer on market. I mean, you can have AAA games, and you have some other games that didn't take that long to produce. I'm not saying they're bad games, but the production value is less. Each brand advertiser wants its brand to be displayed in the most favorable environment possible. It's like a frame for them. It's like when you buy a ring. You have to have this very nice box as well that is part of the price you're paying. It's the same thing with a brand. They really want to be sure they're in the right environment to be seen. So out of the window goes the too violent games, or games that are just not qualitative enough, or at least seen as such by the brand.
So that's all my questions about brands, publishing, and user acquisition. But I'm sure we'll have even better questions from the audience. So if you'd like to ask anything for our panel, please raise your hands. We'll get you a mic. Very, very shy bunch. There we go.
Yeah, so the answer is yes. And that has to be part of your strategy. Do you want to maximize, CPMs, or are you in this game for the long term? For us, when you deal with a brand, you deal mostly 9 times out of 10 with a media agency. And a media agency will come to you and say, listen, I've got that amount of money. I've got a campaign that I need you to run for my client. It's going to be between that date and that date. I need to buy 50 million impressions of videos at that specific CPM in that market. So either you take it or leave it. It's not an on per impression basis unless you go programmatic. But if you go on an IO, on an insertion order based, then it's a fixed CPM. Now what we see is on video campaigns, and we have, don't forget, we have one thing that many other medias don't have: rewarded videos, with completion rates that are 95% plus. That's something that you guys should leverage, if you want to go brand advertising, because that will command very high eCPMs. I mean, we get eCPMs in Italy, of 150 euros on rewarded videos with brands. We get about 90 to 100 in Germany on rewarded videos. So I'll let you be the judge whether that's high or low compared to performance and UA style campaigns. But ultimately, it's down to your strategy as a game developer. Do you want to favor this? In the case of Gameloft, we said everything that is brand will take precedence over gaming advertising in our games. So typically what we'll do is we'll set a rate card for the year per market, per format. And our ad sales guys will enforce that. And we'll always make sure that this is higher than the average eCPM we get from the gaming, I would say, ads that we run, which is lower in our waterfall. So we run brands across the board. So we do banners, interstitials, rewarded videos, playable ads. Playable ads actually is probably the second largest revenue generator for us. First one is rewarded videos. Again, when we talk about brands. Interstitials, we still have some people that ask us for classic interstitials, static. But we always try to challenge them. And again, the fact that we've created our own creative team, they are always constantly working on more interactive, higher impact, higher engagement type of formats. So from static interstitial, we went to motion interstitial, motion rewarded interstitials. I mean, we always try to combine stuff.
One question for you, Alex. How do you try to convince people, for example, a brand, to create a specific playable? Because let's say Nike isn't involved with playables at all. And what is the process, for example, to show them that they have to build one to perform well in your games?
So you have different approaches. Usually one is to show them that their main competitors are doing it. And they'll say, oh, maybe I'm missing out on something. So the fear of missing out we talked about. That's one thing. But I mean, that's partly a joke, but it's true. The other side is KPIs. You show them that you can get an engagement rate of up to 50%, 60%, 72% in some cases we've seen with branded playable ad units, and suddenly they start paying attention. Okay, and then you show them the completion rate on people that tap on play, and you show them that you're basically securing a 30 to 40 second long engagement with their brand. And the beauty of those, again, of our industry and of the platform is that we can pass back KPIs, metrics that show engagement. Now, you can actually bet with them and say, well, now, when you spend billions of dollars every year on TV ads, what guarantee do you have that you've got human eyeballs, on that, sitting on that sofa watching at that screen? Zero guarantee. But what I can say is on the video format, when we started running rewarded videos for brands, and we say, yeah, we got 95% plus completion rate, isn't that great? And because the guys were negative towards gaming, they was trying to find, justification and say, oh, yeah, but that's just because of the reward. So they're not paying attention to our brand message. They're triggering the video, putting it down, putting the phone down, fetching themselves a beer, coming back after 30 seconds, getting the reward, but they have not seen my brand message. I said, okay, well, fair point. Okay, that's it's a valid point. Now, how do we prove them wrong? So what we started doing is developing video formats where we apply an HTML5 layer on the video. We don't change the video as such, but we just identify moments of action in the video which we can gamify. And what we do is we mimic, gamification on screen on those videos throughout those 40 seconds. So now I can proudly go back to the brand and say, you're saying that people are just doing this for the reward and not engaging. Well, that's wrong, because I've got hard data here that prove that they've been engaging for the last 40 seconds with your brand message. And, then there's no more resistance, usually.
Is that are we done for time? Have we got any more questions? Okay. Does anyone have any other questions they'd like to ask?
Hey guys, kind of looping back to the hyper-casual element, admittedly I have a vested interest in that. How does kind of the emergence of the hyper-casual scene right now, how is that affecting businesses like yours that obviously aren't directly involved in it? I'm just kind of interested from UA, monetization, chart position, organics, that kind of thing, what your thoughts are?
I mean, on the UA side, it's definitely made it harder to chart, just because the number of hyper-casual titles that are on the charts at any given time, and the number of downloads they get just through UA, through their own cross-promotion networks. On the monetization side, because we tend to have a little bit more hardcore games, we don't tend to see a ton of hyper-casual ads in those, but as networks get better at user-level targeting, I expect that we'll see more of those, because as they get more one-to-one, in their ability to target ads to users, they'll be able to identify those players and show the hyper-casual ads to them. My take right now is that the hyper-casual market feeds itself, but there's enough inventory in that space to keep that ecosystem going.
We definitely start to see more on the monetization side. We definitely see more hyper-casual ads come into our inventory. And as you guys know, the CPI for hyper-casual demand is slightly lower, right? So that reflects on the CPM. So we're definitely seeing slightly lower CPM as more of the hyper-casual ads coming in. Yeah. I think there's also like people are talking about AppLovin with the Lion Studios, right? Like how that impact the whole industry. I would say, everybody's being really cautious about like, okay, hyper-casual games are acquire user and then they just keep them within their own loop. So we're potentially losing user to them, but how do we acquire them back? I think that's a good question for everybody.
Have we got any other questions? Have we got one just over here?
So one interesting subject, in my opinion, is the Fortnite move to try and bypass Google Play. So do you guys think this is something that only such a developer with such a magnitude and massive scale can do? Or this is a trend that we are going to expect and see more and more developers trying to get out of the stores?
I mean, if I had to guess, I could see Google just implementing similar rules to Apple. We cannot bypass the store. That's just my personal guess. Right. Either you publish on our store and your monetization runs through our store and we take our cut, or we won't support your game. So that might require them to close up Android a little bit in terms of accessibility. But if more devs do this and Google's realizing how much money they're leaving on the table compared to what iOS is making, I could see that door closing for other developers in the future. But again, my guess.
Cool, thank you. We had another question here. No worries. Do we have anyone else?
I actually want to ask Brian, who is the $100 I said, can you introduce it to me?
Okay, I think we're good then. All right, thanks very much, everybody.